Ludwig's story begins not with triumph, but with violence. 1770, Bonn. His father, Johann, was a court singer. But his main passion was not music, but alcohol. Hearing of the young Mozart's incredible success in Europe, Johann decided to raise his own child prodigy for profit. Ludwig's childhood was one of endless late-night rehearsals. His father would return from the tavern after midnight, wake the child, and force him to play the harpsichord until dawn. If the boy made a mistake, a blow would follow. Beethoven didn't just learn music, he survived it. This shaped his character, sullen, withdrawn, but incredibly strong-willed. At 14, he effectively became the head of the family when his mother died of tuberculosis and his father drank himself to death. At that moment, the young organist realized that Vienna, the musical capital of the world, was the only way to salvation. In 1792, Beethoven moved to Vienna permanently. His playing style shocked the aristocracy. In an era of elegance and grace, he played roughly and powerfully, breaking the strings and hammers of pianos. They called him the bear, but this bear possessed the soul of an angel. One day, Mozart, after listening to young Ludwig improvise, spoke prophetically, "Beware of this young man. He will make the world talk about him." Beethoven soon became the most fashionable pianist in Vienna. He took lessons slyly, but their relationship did not work out. The old master considered Beethoven's music too dark and scholarly, and Ludwig called Haydn old dad, whose time had passed. Beethoven already felt that the classical framework was too restrictive. At 26, when life seemed like an endless holiday, disaster struck. At first, it was a quiet ringing in his ears. Ludwig attributed it to a cold, his stomach, or anything else. But the ringing turned into a constant hum. Deafness for a musician is professional death. Beethoven fell into a deep depression. He stopped appearing in public, so that no one would notice his affliction. People considered him misanthropic and arrogant, but he simply didn't hear what was said to him. In 1802, in Heiligenstadt, a suburb of Vienna, he wrote a document, which is today called the Heiligenstadt Testament. In it, he bids farewell to his brothers and confesses that he wanted to commit suicide. "A little more, and I would have killed myself. Only one thing held me back, my art." This moment became a turning point. Instead of giving in, he decided to grab fate by the throat. The greatest, heroic period of his creative work began. Deafness was just the tip of the iceberg in Beethoven's medical nightmare. If we look at his medical records, we see a story of incredible courage. From his youth, Ludwig suffered from excruciating abdominal pain, which he called my intestinal torments. Modern researchers, having studied strands of his hair, found monstrous concentrations of lead 100 times higher than the recommended daily allowance. In those days, lead was added to cheap wine for sweetness, and Beethoven, unknowingly, slowly poisoned himself for decades. The lead destroyed his liver and kidneys, and was most likely a contributing factor to his hearing loss. Added to this were rheumatism, jaundice, and dropsy. In the final months of his life, his abdomen swelled so greatly that doctors had to make punctures to drain liters of fluid. He endured these operations without anesthesia, gritting his teeth and joking that the doctor reminded him of a cook preparing a stew from his body. His life was a constant struggle to overcome physical pain so that his mind could continue to create. Beethoven believed in the ideals of the French Revolution, liberty, equality, and fraternity. He dedicated his Third Symphony to Napoleon Bonaparte, seeing him as the liberator of Europe. But when he learned that Napoleon had proclaimed himself emperor, Ludwig was furious. He crossed out the name Bonaparte's on the title page so hard that he tore the paper with his pen. The symphony became known simply as heroic. The music of this period is a struggle. The Fifth Symphony begins with that famous knock. It's like fate knocking on the door. Every note here is a struggle between man and fate. And in the finale, man triumphs. Beethoven was the first in history to introduce trombones into a symphony, to create the effect of a resounding triumph. Beethoven never married, although he was constantly in love. His chosen ones were often aristocratic students, for whom he was a brilliant commoner, but not a match for marriage. The famous Moonlight Sonata is dedicated to Countess Juliette Guichard, who broke his heart by choosing another. He seriously considered marriage, but the social gulf between them was unbridgeable. The title Moonlight was given to the sonata after the composer's death by the music critic Ludwig van Beethoven, who recalled the first movement as the light of the moon over Lake Lucerne. However, Beethoven himself called it Sonata Kos una Fantasia, a sonata in the spirit of fantasy. The first movement is not romantic, it is profound numbness and grief. It is the hypnotic rhythm of a funeral march. The sonata's finale is an explosion of rage. If you listen to the third movement, you'll hear Beethoven literally hammering the notes into the piano. It's a protest from a man relegated to his place as a commoner. After his death, a letter addressed to his immortal beloved was found in a secret drawer of his desk. The identity of this woman still sparks debate among historians. He wrote, "My heart is full of things I must say to you. Live for me and for yours." For the first time in history, a choir was included in a purely instrumental genre. This ode to joy became a hymn to the unity of humanity. At the premiere, Beethoven stood with his back to the audience, attempting to conduct from memory. When the last notes faded, he continued waving his arms, unaware that the music had ended. The audience didn't just applaud, they wept. Beethoven's most difficult personal drama unfolded not in the concert hall, but in the courtroom. After the death of his brother, a long-running custody battle began over his nephew Karl. Ludwig, having no children of his own, invested all his unspent love in this boy, but he did so with a fanaticism bordering on madness. He wanted to mold Karl into an ideal person, a genius, or a great scientist. He forbade the boy from seeing his mother, whom he considered a vicious woman. But the Titan proved to be an intolerable guardian. His overprotectiveness, outbursts of rage, and constant control stifled the young man. The conflict reached its climax in 1826. Karl, unable to bear his uncle's pressure, attempted suicide by shooting himself in the head. The bullet only grazed his temple, but it was a shot to Beethoven's heart. In one day, the composer became a decrepit old man. He realized that love cannot be forced. It was after this shock that he wrote his last, quietest, and most philosophical works. Karl joined the army, never having become a second Beethoven, and Ludwig was left alone. Alone with his music and approaching eternity. Symphony No. 9, Testament to Humanity. This work, the pinnacle of his life, was written in absolute silence. By 1824, he no longer heard the sound of an orchestra, but thousands of voices resounded in his head. Beethoven took an unprecedented step. He introduced the human voice into the symphony. Beethoven was a nightmare for his landlords. He frequently changed homes, sometimes moving 2 or 3 times a year. His apartment was a chaotic place. Pianos without strings, which he would rip out trying to hear anything. Plates with the remains of food, manuscripts of midnotes, and unemptied chamber pots under his instruments. He would walk around the room completely naked, pouring a bucket of cold water over his head to invigorate his brain while singing loudly. His neighbors considered him mad. But it was precisely in this chaos that the strict order of his music was born. He was an ascetic in his daily life, but a king in the world of sound. His only true passion was coffee. He always counted out exactly 60 beans for 1 cup, no more, no less. Beethoven died on March 26, 1827. On the day of his death, a terrible snowstorm with thunderstorms raged over Vienna. They say that just before his death, he raised his fist to the sky, as if waging his final argument with God. 20,000 people attended his funeral, an incredible number for the time. Vienna stood still. He left behind more than just sheet music. He transformed the musician's status from a servant in livery to a prophet, a free artist who dictates his will to the emperor. Friends, if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please do so, and don't forget to like and click the bell so you don't miss future videos on our channel.